to another episode of Start, Grow, Monetise Your Podcast with me, Alex Chisnell.
And me, James Bell. You haven't done that for a while, have you? Did you nearly stumble over it? You stumbled, didn't you?
No, I didn't. I was waiting for you, you fool.
Oh, sorry, my bad. I stumbled. In life, I'm stumbling.
And we are here today, folks, to chat to you about how to generate leads for your business with a podcast. So if you are an entrepreneur, a business owner, or you are thinking of starting a business, then you could do far worse than use your podcast as a lead generation tool, or to start a podcast and use that as your main top of funnel lead generation. Would you not agree, Mr. Burt?
I would agree, and I've got loads of experience of this working exactly like that for clients, and I know that you have as well. One of the biggest misconceptions, and we're actually going to do a podcast in the next few weeks about this, sort of the biggest misconceptions in podcasting, but people think that the way you make money in podcasting is sponsorship, is ads, is, drinking a bottle of fuel halfway through your episode. And yes, that's one way that you can monetize your content for sure, and you can have adverts and all that kind of stuff. Or AG1, there you go. Click the code Alex now to... Wow, you really slurped that down like an animal. For those listening, don't go onto YouTube and watch out for you.
It's on everywhere.
On YouTube, I apologise entirely. But yeah, the misconception is that you have to have advertisers and sponsors, etc. But what we found, especially for B2B podcast, a much better way to make a lot more money, and the keyword there is a lot more, or keywords there is a lot more, is to actually use your podcast exactly like I said, like top of funnel activity. How can you get the right demographic of people into your world? Utilizing interviews as inbound leads. Those people that, if you're a coach, consultant, expert, if you haven't been able to get them across the line, you haven't been able to get them to do it, you having to do discovery call after discovery call, you just can't get them across the line. Why not record a podcast with them and convert them? You can spend an hour of time talking to them. You can find out all of their problems, all of their issues. You build up know, like, and trust. People buy from people. And then after that, you're infinitely more likely to convert that client than if you haven't had that interaction with them. So that's the way to think about a podcast from a B2B sense, or make content that your listening audience, your desired demographic want to know about. Like what we're doing with this podcast here. Me and Al were talking just offline. 70% of people are tuning into podcasts for education. That's why, if you've noticed within our shows, they're getting shorter and shorter and shorter. They are 10 to 15 minutes max, unless we really go on a mad waffly one, because people are just turning up for that bit of information and then they're going. We don't need them to stick around for 60 minutes. We don't need to have a big sponsor with a big drinks brand, because it wouldn't work for us. What it's going to be more beneficial is people converting, going, these guys know what they're talking about. Click the link in the call to action, and then going and downloading the yourpodcastcourse.com, subtle plug there, and going in and taking...
You did there.
It was seamless, wasn't it? It was absolutely seamless. It's a masterclass, guys. But that's how you generate more leads for your business with a podcast, frankly.
Yeah, and look, we both got examples of doing this, and I actually remember for the first time doing this by accident myself on my podcast. Cue t-shirt if you're not on video.
Here he is, Brandon Merch, you say. Go on, son.
Screw it, just do it. And I remember having this conversation. Funnily enough, I had an email from him yesterday, just like, generic email, and it prompted that in my head. So a guy called Eric Hawk, I think his name is, and he basically has a marketing agency in the US, and he had been pitched to me as a guest. I'd seen some of the people he'd had on his show before, very high profile American guests, and thought, do you know what, this is a good conversation to have for network potential. So I had the conversation with him to be a guest on my podcast. And at the end of the podcast, and for me, these are the two key points, is yes, you've got the interview part of the podcast, which is where you are literally, building the trust, finding out their problems. But for me, it's the icebreaker at the beginning, but it's the bit at the end after you finish recording and you're signing off and you're just chatting, because now that you do know, like, and trust each other, or you should have done from the questions that you asked, you build up a bit of rapport. And he shared with me that he was unhappy with the podcast agency that produced his own podcast. I didn't even ask that question. This was my, eureka moment, because I did it by accident. And I just said, all right, what are you unhappy with? And, he explained what it was. And I was like, how much are they charging you? And I was like, wow, okay, that's pretty expensive compared to what we charge. And he's like, what do you mean what you charge? What do you do then? And I was like, well, I have a podcast agency. Oh, right. What do you charge and what do you do? What's your turnaround? And, it just led on to the conversation. And I accidentally upsold him into a £3,500 a month podcast production that we did. And you just think, just that one conversation has led to the equivalent of nearly £40,000 a year. So no matter what you do, whether you sell widgets or you sell courses or you sell drinks or whatever, what is that one client worth to you that you can have on your podcast as a guest? Do the maths for that. And for me, I know we've both got other examples of this, but that was me doing it by accident. And as you say, for the purposes of this podcast, it's an education podcast. We're teaching you how to start, grow, and monetize your podcast. But if you want to do it all yourself, then you can go and buy our course. Or if you want help doing it, then equally, to go to James has his own agency. I have my separate agency. And there's now we found out there are a million other agencies doing the same thing. It's become a super competitive place. But the point being, use this tool, this amazing tool of podcasting to get people on and have a conversation instead of doing it via discovery call, or do a discovery call and hit the record button, obviously with a guest permission, right?
Just wanted to take a quick minute to say a big thank you for watching this podcast. If you are thinking about starting your own podcast to grow your brand or your business, then we would love to help you out. Yourpodcastcourse.com is a place where you can find 55 on-demand videos. There's trainings, there's blueprints, there's guides, there's cheat sheets, there's downloads. Everything that you need to utilize and to start your own powerful podcast is in there right now.
It's guaranteed for 7 days. So if you don't like it, we'll return your money, and we're going to start you off with a fantastic offer.
Absolutely. Just because you are consuming this podcast for a limited time only, for the first 25 people only, this is going to be, we're going to give you 50% off yourpodcastcourse.com. Click the link that's in the show notes. There's information there, and it will be 50% off joining the course. As I say, we will walk you through how to start, how to grow, how to monetize your podcast. We'll talk to you about artwork, setup, names, ideal listener profiles, how to get the ideal guest, how you do the interviews, how you do the 14-day launch process, everything you need to utilize and to know to create a powerful podcast. We will tell you. We've done it 400 plus times. We have done some of the most successful podcast launches in Europe at this point in time, and the exact strategy and process that we charge tens of thousands of pounds to our agency clients for, you can get access to through yourpodcastcourse.com. 50% off for a limited time only. Click the link in the show notes now. Cheers. It's one of those things where I've had a phone call literally this morning from a guy who I semi-know on LinkedIn. And I said to him, this is almost a hard sell with podcasting because you can't really sell this tangible benefit because it's a little bit intangible. But he had connected with me via LinkedIn through a podcast I do with a mate of mine called Jimbo. We do a show called Business Broadcast. We coach business.
Have you ever talked about that on the show? Have we ever talked about that on the show?
I think we have, a few times. Not that we need any more traffic going to that show, and not that Jimbo needs any more attention going on in his profile, quite frankly, because he's flying right now, especially as he was trying to be the mayor of Essex. My God.
I saw that.
But so from sort of the coaching of these business owners, this guy had connected with me on LinkedIn, and then he had a guest on his podcast. This is so many steps removed, right? And the guy has sold up a retail business. I won't say who it is, but he sold a massive retail business. Sold it for a lot of money, a lot of money. He's got a podcast, but he doesn't really know what he's doing with it. So this guy, who's the connection on LinkedIn, has now introed me directly to the guy who ran one of the biggest retail companies in the country. So I generated a lead from my company via somebody else through content that I hadn't even intentionally done. That's what can happen with podcasting. So don't think that the way that you make money or the way that you generate a lead is from advertising or sponsorship. There's many, many ways to skin a cat. Wrapping this sort of very succinct episode up, though, one thing you do have to do, and Al touched on it earlier, you've got to be tactical about this. You've got to go in with the intention of doing a podcast for this purpose. Now, you might accidentally, like we have both done, accidentally find that you generate a lead off the back of a podcast because of the conversation you wanted to have anyway for the sake of the content. But if you're starting a podcast now, start with that end goal in mind and then reverse engineer it. Where are you pushing people to? Where's that call to action going to be? Where are you going to land people on your website? Because if it's just going to be go to my general website, whatever, then there's lots of escape hatches on that website. So any traffic you do generate is not going to be as practical or tactical or impactful as it could be. For example, if you go to the link in our show notes that we always talk about, and there's probably been an advert that's played in the middle of this episode as well about yourpodcastcourse.com, that is a intentional squeeze sales page. You can't go anywhere else. It doesn't let you follow me on Insta, doesn't let you go and follow our LinkedIn. It's trying to convert you for, if you got value from this conversation, if you're looking to start, grow, and monetize your own podcast, that's where you go and find out that information. So make sure that if you are creating a show, and this show is a lead generation tool, that's the reason that we make it. It's the reason why every couple of months we spend half a day together, is to, and of course we love each other dearly, but is to make content that ultimately generates and drives leads. And the call to action is one part of it. If you also look, and Al does a much better job than I do of this. I will improve on this, I promise, at some stage. But repurposing of the content, the blogs and all that other stuff, it all funnels into that one place. The content more generally, yes, it's good for generalized brand awareness, but it is designed, every single aspect of it is designed to generate leads for your business. And then you can look at it, you can make a decision based on, you can act on fact. Is this thing generating leads or not? Because otherwise, what a tagline, right? I actually stole that off a man that I don't really like, but I'm not going to give him a shout out because I don't really like him. He knows who he is, and I know that he knows that I know who he is. So there we go. But yeah, so be very intentional with it. And if you're sitting there, by the way, just a final thing, if you're sitting there going, yeah, but I'm in a super niche. I once launched a podcast for a client who was in the short-term recruitment space for geological deep piling. What? Geological deep piling recruitment short-term. I mean, that's like 4 or 5 sub-niches of sub-niches. The reason the geezer wanted to do the podcast in the first place was because he wanted to get his foot in the door with companies. He said to me, there's only 25 companies I could ever work with in the UK. I just want a reason to go and have conversations with them that's not a, hello, I'm a short-term contractor recruitment company. Have you got any need for people right now? Because that's what everyone's doing. Within, I think it was 6 months, 23 of the 25 companies had been on his podcast as a guest. And within a year, 6 of those were his client. So that just goes to show, no matter how niche you are, this format of content will generate leads for your business if you set it up in the right way.
Yeah, set it up intentionally with that very purpose, and then just reverse engineer how you're going to go about doing it. All of those things. Do the Dream 100. Or the Dream 25 in your example case. Who are the people that you want to connect with? I remember doing this with a podcast before, and again, it was just around partnerships. I just wanted to partner with different organizations, and I would say most people would be flattered to be invited on a podcast, right? So, start with that in mind, that the people you're going to reach out to are going to be flattered that you're asking them to come on your show, but get, super dialed in on who you want to get on the show. And then, you put together a really, as we've done in another episode, a great one pager that you can do your outreach. You can connect with them via email, via LinkedIn, all of the different tools that are out there to connect with your guests, and decide on the format, whether it's online like this or in person, or you're going to their office to record it even, make it as easy as possible for them. It all depends on how important that person is for you to have that conversation with. But, we could go on and on about this, but we're going to stop before it hits 12 minutes.